Hello, 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 everyone, and welcome to another adventure in history. I'm your host, Shane McInnes, guy with two thumbs, wearer of silly hats, minister of silly walks. I hope everybody is doing well tonight. It is good old-fashioned Tuesday, which means it is viewer request night. And tonight's request is a little bit unique, and we'll talk about that in just a bit. Do want to do the sort of opening spill, though. First off, well, I don't really know what's first off. I guess I could do the why we're here. Hopefully you're here because you want to hear a little bit of history and maybe some bad jokes and maybe have a little bit of fun. You might be here because it's Tuesday night and what else is going on Tuesday night in the middle of a pandemic. Either way, welcome. The show is designed to hopefully break down the walls of stuffy historians and let people understand that history is accessible, that the people in the ancient world aren't so different than us, and that at the end of the day, we're all just people, right? So, I am a teacher by trade. I teach college. I have been a teacher, though, for about 13 years. I've taught junior high and elementary and high school and upper level and lower level history stuff, and it's been all sorts of fun, so that's why I'm here on Twitch today. I will note that for some reason, it looks like my internet is doing all sorts of funny stuff. I don't know if this is the connection here in rural South Mississippi, or if this is a larger issue with Twitch, but hopefully the stream doesn't cut. If it does cut, just let me know. Shoot me a message in the chat or something like that. As always, feel free as we move through to ask questions. I really enjoy interaction. I don't like this necessarily to be a lecture. I prefer to consider these more of a kind of guided conversation, if you will. Well, I would hope that it's coming through fine on our end. I'm just broadcasting to the living room. So you can send me an email here at mckinnistravels@gmail.com if you want to send me anything or get my opinion on anything or just give me some feedback on the stream. You can also follow me on social media at Twitter and Instagram at somehistoryguy. I've been a little bit negligent of my social media accounts for the past week or so. It's been really busy, and I've been either swamped or too lazy. You know, you get that point where you're just burned out and you're just like, I'm going to quit and not do anything, and that actually just makes things back up on you on the other side. So it is what it is. I took all of Friday off, which was nice, especially during the summer when I'm not supposed to be doing anything anyway. Went on a hike with my wife and a friend, KP, one of the mods in the chat. We were supposed to get out to this World War II prisoner of war camp, and we got there, and the only thing that was left was one wall of one building, and it felt the history part of the day was kind of a letdown. The hike itself was actually quite nice. I enjoyed being out in the woods and being away from, the stuff of the day. So it was a pleasant time. I enjoyed it. Yeah. All right. So I mentioned that this is a viewer request stream. So usually every other Tuesday we do viewer requests where I take requests from the stream. And we have a little bit of a vote, and we see who wants to do what, and then I work something up and present that. This is a little bit of a different one. This one didn't come from the whole chat. This one came from a single viewer in the chat, that one being my wife. Her birthday was recent, and she said, "Hey, would you do one on the Khmer?" And you know, me being a nice guy and also liking Southeastern Asia as a region of history, decided I would go ahead and do that. So this is a viewer request episode, but it's more of a single viewer request, the most important viewer. I've been accused of nepotism because of this, and I will absolutely cop to that. This is 100% nepotism. But as always, our stream title is some sort of goofy pun, dad joke kind of thing, and it is "Turned Down for What?" What being spelled W-A-T, which is important because, well, "what" is one of the words that we're going to use a lot tonight. It's a Thai word that just means enclosure, but it also has a lot to do with temples and stuff like that. So, and hopefully everybody knows the. I don't know if anybody. Yeah, exactly. Turn down for what? And actually, you do kind of need to turn down because most of these are temples, so you do kind of need to not go in turned up. I'm trying to make this work. I don't know how many people are with me on this. I'm perfectly fine laughing at myself. So, as always, when we kind of get ready to go kicked off here, make sure that you are taking advantage of adventure points. You get those by doing stuff like going on raids with me and hanging out in the chat, do various other things. You can redeem those for lots of different weird little things. Some of them are history related, some of them are just goofy, because I'm kind of a goofy dude. I do have an addition. Speaking of the adventure that my wife and Kilted Preacher and I went out on Friday, I was gifted an opinion hat. My friend KP is probably definitely my oldest friend in the world. I've known that guy for, I don't know, I'm probably 33 something years. And he has gifted me an opinion hat. And I am not going to show it until someone summons it. So it'll be a little bit of a reveal. It's a little bit expensive, but this show's not necessarily about my opinion. It's more about historical fact and goofing off and having fun. So I didn't want it to just be all Shane talk show all the time, right? So there we go. All right. So hope everybody's having a good one, and let us go ahead and launch into the history stuff. Please make sure you ask questions. Make sure you do goofy comments. If you have dad jokes or mom jokes or uncle jokes or just any kind of joke, just go ahead and put it down in the chat. If you come up with something snarky or want to correct my grammar, do what you need to do. We're all friends here, right? And if you're being a bit of a jerk, I'll say something about it, but just don't be a jerk, right? Everybody's cool with everybody else as long as we're all cool with everybody else, right? Or at least I think so. All right. So, first off, where the devil is this stuff going down? So, we're going to be talking about the Khmer Empire. And they lived in the Southeastern Asia region, which is this kind of area that I've popped up right here on our good old-fashioned Google Earth map. But they're most specifically going to be associated with the modern-day country of Cambodia. Let me go ahead and throw up our modern borders so that we can look at modern countries. So Southeastern Asia is a region that a lot of people don't hear very much about, especially in world history classes in America. You're probably not going to hear anything about this region until the Vietnam War in World Civ 2 or American History 2. But this region is very vibrant. It is a very unique culture. They have lots of different ethnic groups. They have lots of different languages. They had multiple different periods of history, just like everybody else did. You have big empires here. You have really cool stories here. And again, a lot of this mostly gets looked over because, well, most history that you're going to take in United States or especially European kind of world is what we call Western civilization, where you don't really talk about the stuff over in Asia very much at all. which is sad because we all live on the same globe, right? And stuff that happens over in Asia has direct effect on stuff that happens in Europe and stuff that happens in America. And you can't just pretend like, oh, that whole corner of the world just doesn't really exist. So this region right here is the modern day country of Myanmar. This is the modern day country of Thailand right here. This is the modern day country of Laos. This is Vietnam, and this is Cambodia. Down here we also have Indonesia and Malaysia. Indonesia is a bit of a hard country to point at because it encompasses multiple different islands. Malaysia is also a little bit split here up at the top. The region itself is not going to be as early when we come to civilization as some of the other places. So India is going to be much older, as is China. Now the people are going to show up around the same amount of time and around the same period. But you're not really going to see them settling down into villages and habitation for very long, for the same period of time. So where we see early civilization in India starting all the way back around like the 4000s BC, a little bit into the 3000s BC, you're not really going to see the same level of sort of, hey, what's up, Jim Bob? How's it going, man? You're not going to see the same level of habitation where you start seeing big villages and kingdoms and stuff like that happen in Southeastern Asia until probably around the 300s or so BC. So part of this is because of the isolation of the area. The region itself is not very hospitable. There are lots of problems when it comes to stuff like elevation. There's lots of mountains in the area, which of course make it hard to do things like farm. There's also a problem with water. In some areas, there's just too much water because of all the rainfall. And in some areas, there's not enough water because of all of the elevational challenges. So you're not going to see people getting into this area until they kind of get pushed down in there and the population of the world grows. But they're going to be fairly successful. And the Khmer Empire has a few kind of regional powers that it starts off as. So you don't go straight to the empire. The first group of people in the area are called Funan. And we really don't know too much about the Funan people. They were, the best that we can tell, some sort of ruling hierarchy. So they were a group of people that were just kind of in charge of the region. We don't know how big their population was. We also don't know whether or not they were some sort of unified political group. It's kind of hard to say. So this could have been, and one of the reasons it's so hard to say is because they didn't have a written language of their own. So they don't have any records that are coming out from this period of time. And the Funan date range is somewhere from about maybe the turn of the 1000s to, the turn of the BC to AD period, so like right around year 1 to maybe about 50 AD. And then for about the next 500 years, you start seeing this sort of, this unique culture called the Funan culture that starts to develop. Now, again, there's evidence for these people being a unique, independent physical culture going all the way back into like the 300s BC. But it's kind of hard to tell exactly who these people are. Like, they don't have a written language. We don't have a lot of genetic evidence that points at these people being a unique sort of ethnic racial identity or genetic identity. There's a lot of people kind of moving around in this area during that period of time. We do know that one of the things that was most important to them is this big thing right here. This is the Malay Peninsula. And there's a little region right around in here where you can get from the Indian Ocean to part of the Pacific down here in the South China Sea. And that region was really important for trade because you wanted to be able to move your goods across this isthmus right here. And it's called the Isthmus of Kra, which sounds like some like really bad guy from like Conan the Barbarian. I am Isthmus of Kra. But it's this region here in this Malay Peninsula that lets you get across without having to sail all the way down here and then loop back up. So we know that they were doing some trade with the region. We know that they were controlling that passage across land. They were doing some land trade, but we're not really sure too much about them. So the Funan culture is sort of the precursor, earliest sort of kind of quasi-culture that gives rise to the Khmer. But what we do know is another group called the Chinla. And these people are actually fully established. They're kings of several small states. There are evidences that sometimes these Chinla states sort of made a larger group. We do have kind of a regional identity of where these people might have lived, which is this sort of green spot right here. So this would have taken up part of what is modern-day Thailand, most of what is modern-day Cambodia, and then a little bit over to what is Vietnam and Laos, where you see these individual Chinla kings. And sometimes a larger, more unified Chinla identity in Southeastern Asia. So it's not like the Khmer Empire sort of comes out of nowhere, right? There's never an empire that just sort of springs out of the dirt and becomes an empire overnight. It doesn't really work that way. So with these Chinla, you're going to start seeing them show up in external sources a lot more frequently, especially Chinese sources. So around the 700 AD mark, the ruling dynasty in China is called the Tang dynasty, and it's spelled Tang, like the orange drink, but just pronounced Tang. These guys were really big. They did a lot of expansion. They did a lot of trade with the region. Some of their leaders got down into Southeastern Asia and tried to corner the market on some trade goods down in that area. They expanded all the way down into what is modern-day Vietnam. Did a bunch of expansion of port cities along that Southeastern Asian area. So this sort of coastline over here, China's going to kind of militarily dominate all of this region. And so you're going to start seeing references to the Chinla kings as either causing trouble for the Chinese or swearing loyalty to the Chinese or trading with the Chinese. And the Chinla are going to be the sort of proto-ancestors of the Khmer, because they're going to be one of the guys, one of the kings of the Chinla is going to end up going on to be sort of the first big ruler of the Khmer Empire, and this guy's name is Jayavarman. Be warned, the names of a lot of these places are long. The Kievet, hey, welcome. You did finally find a history channel. I hope you enjoy it. Feel free to ask questions, make comments, throw out goofy stuff. Do whatever you need to do. Welcome, Kivit. I hope I'm saying that well. I don't know what that means. Perhaps someone from Kiev? Maybe so. All right. So what I was saying is the language that we're going to be using is from an old language called the Old Khmer. This is different than the modern language that they use in the region today. Old Khmer has a lot of influence from Sanskrit because India is kind of right there by it, and a lot of the Khmer are going to look to India to be sort of like their big brothers. India was very well established prior to all of this stuff happening. So we're talking about the Khmer Empire. The Khmer Empire stretches from about 802 AD until about 1431 AD. And we're going to cover pretty much the whole period of time tonight, so all 630-something years. We won't go through all of it super meticulously. We'll just sort of hit the high points. And we're down in Southeastern Asia. So the Khmer are most closely identified with modern people in Cambodia, which is this region right here. Capital today, Phnom Penh. Not the same as the ancient capitals. We'll talk about some of those in just a bit. So Jayavarman II is one of these Chinla kings, and he had a little bit of experience with a larger kingdom in the region called the Kingdom of Java, which was based down in Indonesia. They had expanded up the Malay Peninsula and into southeastern Asia, and there's some evidence that Jayavarman might have been a client king to the kings of Java. We don't really know too much about this because, again, we're still not really good on historical records at this time period. So Jayavarman lived somewhere between about 802, or he ruled rather, from about 802 to 835 AD. And even at that time, there's still not a lot of writing going on in the Khmer world. But what we do know that sort of sets Jayavarman II apart is that he did a lot of stuff that's going to get him remembered. And whether or not he really did all of this stuff and really sort of, kind of set all of the stuff up is open to a little bit of debate. Anytime you start seeing people from way back in the past that have all of these humongous stories about them, you sort of have to think a little bit of that. Maybe some of it might be a little bit, exaggerated, but especially because we don't really have a lot from Jayavarman himself. We don't have a lot of images of him. We don't necessarily have a lot of decrees or history about him. We just have all these stories that were written down way after he died. So, interesting. You're from Europe, and now the basics of that whole world history and how they interacted with China through the Silk Road, Opium War, Boxer, etc. Right? Never read anything about this. Yeah, and that's one of the things that we mentioned kind of right off at the top of the stream, that in Europe and the United States and in what we call the West, a lot of stuff that you study doesn't talk about Eastern civilization. We all sort of just cover Western civilization. Isn't that the whole point of being king? To make sure that everybody remembers you. Well, yeah, that's true. But the question that we have around Jayavarman is, was he actually as big as the people after him say he was? Because you can use an individual and a sort of myth around an individual to craft an identity for a later kingdom, especially in the region where at the time you had lots of different people trying to sort of play politics in this area. And if Jayavarman is the person who created a unique Khmer identity and was the founder of this unique Khmer state, well, that's a really important thing that you can sort of build off of. Like, at that point, you have a common ancestor and a common history, and then you can wrap yourself around that image. And of course, that sort of creates this hero figure or kind of sage king figure. He was a real guy. He definitely was a real guy. He did build some stuff. He actually built some pretty neat temples. I'll show you one of the temples that he built here. There's a big temple in his capital city that he built. We'll talk about that in just a second. This is a temple called Bakong. Suppose it's all Eurocentrism. It's always weird that in history books they talk about the Dark Ages, but it's regional because Arabia was flourishing. Right. I suppose they had that knowledge because they got Alexandria and more preserved knowledge. And they also had contact with the Chinese and the Indians, the people over in India. So China and India were both flourishing quite well during the European Dark Ages, or the medieval period, whatever you want to call it. So this again is Bakong, a big temple built by Jayavarman II in his capital city, which means that I need to go ahead and actually establish the Khmer as an independent kingdom and get you through that material. So he was a king of the Chinla. He was possibly a client king of the Empire of Java, but he's going to declare himself independent, and he's going to take a very important title. And this title is Deva Raja. And sometimes you see this written together as one word, but what this literally means in the language is God King. And this was a title that was being used by rulers in India, especially Hindu rulers in India. And he's going to make this a point of declaring himself his own man. There's a really sort of important city in the region at the time called Mahendra Parvata. and he goes to this city. It was sort of a holy city on a mountain, and he declares himself Deva Raja, that he is the god king of the Khmer, and he throws off all of the outside hindrance and power that claims his area, and he's going to be the guy that runs everything. For a very long time, we had no idea where Mahendra Parvata was. It was only recently discovered thanks to some ground-penetrating radar stuff, some infrared scanning stuff, and some satellite imagery. So I think right now they're actually working on clearing and excavating at Mahendra Parvata. So the early Khmer would have practiced Hinduism, yes. And that's an important thing to remember. The Hindu culture had made its way over from India and was the dominant religion at the time. It's not going to stay that way forever, but what we can infer about the Khmer people is that they were very, very devoutly Hindu, which means that they practiced the caste system, which means that Jayavarman would have been part of the Kshatriya caste, the ruling caste. The temples to whom they dedicate all of these big, the gods to whom they dedicate all these big temples to are Hindu deities. Two of them are apparently more favorable in the Khmer world, that those two being Vishnu and Shiva, two of the big sort of leading deities in Hindu, especially the Vedanta Hindu world. So you see lots of temples dedicated to Vishnu and lots of temples dedicated to Shiva. And what's important to know here is that the Khmer are looking to India, because China is also right. China and India are roughly equidistant from the Khmer. So if we're looking at them on a map, to get from Cambodia to China up here, and to get from Cambodia to India over here is about the same distance. But these people look to India most. And that's going to be an interesting concept, because the Indians at the time weren't a unified power. It's a weird story, and to tell the whole thing, we'd have to go through the entire history of India to get there. But whereas China was a sort of unified big power at this period of time, India was going through some internal struggles and not necessarily unified, but the influence from India is going to be stronger than the influence from China. So there we go. So Jayavarman II, over the course of his 33 years of ruling, is going to really start expanding. He's going to conquer a very sizable chunk of the region. He's going to fight a lot of his enemies, both east, west, north, and south. And he's going to realize that he needs a new capital city. And the city, I'm going to have to type it and then, it's Hariharalaya, but I can't talk and type at the same time. Hariharalaya. There we go. So this is his big capital city, and for the majority of the early period of the Khmer Empire, this is going to be their capital city. You can still go there today. Lots of cool temples there that you can go see. The kings of the Khmer that follow, would there have been any big rivers, waterways, etc., that would have served as travel routes between India and or China? Yeah, mostly along the coastline. And the Khmer had a very big navy and did lots of sea trade. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. There were a few rivers, especially the Mekong River, that was going to be really important. The Mekong River runs sort of right by the capital cities for a while. That's going to be a pretty big thoroughfare. The later emperors, and I'm tipping my hand and getting a little bit ahead of myself, are actually going to do a lot of canal building to sort of try to control the flow of water, to try to control the monsoons. But mostly we're talking about coastline trade. There are big port cities. Those port cities move all the way from the coast of China all the way around to the coast of India and have dozens and dozens of stops in between. So your port cities are going to be your sort of first points of contact between India and the Khmer, and then the Khmer and the Chinese. And those cities are usually going to be sort of a little bit more cosmopolitan because of the stuff that you can see there. I know by studying astronomy that planets and stars had a lot to do with human emotion, and Mars being red and aggressive is the embodiment of war. Cool. Is there something like that for the apotheosis of rulers? So I don't know if Jayavarman would necessarily consider it apotheosis. I don't think that he was necessarily claiming that he was purely religious in a deity himself. I think in his case it was probably more of him copying the leaders of India and following the rules of Hinduism. So inside of Hinduism, there is, inside the caste system, this idea that the caste system is a hierarchical order. And at the top of that order, you have the priests, or the Brahmins. And then the second caste, which is the ruling caste where all the kings and nobles are, is called the Kshatriya. So they're closer to God, or the Hindu version of God, or gods, depending on which sort of version of Hinduism you're talking about. And they did a lot of astrology. They had their own zodiac and astrological stuff and things like that. I don't know how detailed that would have carried over into the Khmer world. And I don't know if we could even tell how detailed that would have been around the time of Jayavarman. We don't have necessarily a whole lot of really good records from his time. That's a fair question, though. Okay, so to sort of hammer home the idea that Jayavarman was a good old-fashioned Hindu, he's going to establish this sort of tradition of receiving a title upon his death. And this is going to be something that the Khmer kings all end up having given to them. So when you died, you'd get a death name. Hey, Yagalanuva, how's it going? And his death name, Jayavarman II's death name, is Supreme Lord of Shiva. So you can't really get away from the Hinduism there, right? If your death name is Supreme Lord of Shiva. So again, we're not going to go through every single leader. I could. There's actually a lot of good, fun history here, but you guys don't want to be here for 4.5 hours while I go through every single one of these in detail. So we're going to kind of hit the high points. And let's talk a little bit about Yasovarman the First. He rules from, let me get down here, from 889 to 910. And the reason I mention him is for a few reasons. Number one, when he took over, he had to fight a bit of a war with both some of his siblings and his uncle to take over the throne. And this is the first time that power had not really passed peacefully from father to son to father to son. And it's going to set up a very unfortunate precedent. And from this point forward in the Khmer world, it's not a guarantee that the sort of heir apparent or the heir designate is definitely going to get the title. When dad dies, it might turn into all-out war. And this is going to be a recurring issue where brothers will fight brothers, uncles will fight nephews, family members will, and the queens get involved quite a bit. I try to marry my brother's widow so that I can take over. It gets kind of nasty sometimes, and this is going to be one of those problems that tends to pop up at the least good time. Like, there's never really a good time for a civil war, right? But when they have these civil wars, it always ends up being like a really bad time. I'm just curious to how you store all this information in your brain. I followed some free university lectures on vertigo. I remember the straight things and theoretical commonality like pure polity, but not the nuance. So I'm a weird guy. I have a weird brain and it stores lots of data. I do have an outline that you can't see right now that I've put together mostly to keep myself on track. If I didn't, I have the tendency to chase, what we call in America chasing rabbits, where you don't tell the story from A to B to C. You tell it A to G to F to H to I to B to C to J. So I have to keep my mind in order. And usually before every stream, I'll sit down and type myself out an outline. Go back through and make sure that I've got all my dates in order. But as my wife can attest, my brain is weird, and I cram a lot of stuff up there. I don't have the biggest processor, but I've got a really big hard drive. Is that how I tell stories? Rabbit tales? Sometimes, David Peterson, sometimes. Welcome, David Peterson. For those of you that do not know, David Peterson, creator of one of my favorite comic books, Mouse Guard. Great guy. Go follow him. Give him some Twitch love. I think one of my favorite David lines is, "I'm burying the lead." And then backtracking. All right, so Yasser Varman has to fight a civil war to take over. This is going to set an unfortunate precedent for other future rulers of the Khmer. He also moves his capital to a new city called Yashadharapura. Oh, that won't even fit on one line. Wow. There we go. Yashadharapura. One of the reasons he moves the capital is a little bit selfish. The old capital of Hariharlaya, according to Yashad Varman, had become so full of temples that he couldn't build anything for himself. So he needs to go establish a new capital so that he can build some stuff and stick his name on it. Because that had become a really important thing about these Khmer emperors. Like, you got to build something big and you got to stick your name on it, right? Like, how does one get into history? I'm still in high school with beta sciences, more of a feeling of how situations with vectors, etc., but I'd love to study history like a university student would. What are good books to read? Oh, man. It really depends on what kind of history that you want to read. There's no magical way that I could give you one book to read all of history. I would say find a period of time that you think is your favorite and then just read whatever you can about it. And what that's going to do is help you build a vocabulary of words, right? So let's say you really like the Khmer, and you just find a book about the Khmer, and then you see these references to places like India, and you go, okay, yeah, so India was important, and you say, okay, so Hinduism is important, okay, and then you go, okay, so this guy's title was Shiva, okay, so now you have a few words that you can go with, but you learn a lot about the Khmer, and you go, so what's up with the Shiva thing? So then you go start reading about Shiva, and you read about all the other Hindu deities, and you read about the formation of the different Hindu sects and how that ties in with all these other people groups like the Aryan people and the Dravidian people. So now you have more words, and you start building this interconnected web, because history is all connected. And you just pick one place and then dive in head first. And as you pick up things around your peripheral interest, you just start branching out in all of the different directions. And then before you know it, you can have a Twitch stream. It usually comes to the realization, I'm burying the lead. Yeah. All right. World history, Chinese history, European history, especially medieval and Renaissance, Roman and Greek. Yeah, so there you go. Well, here's something that might be easy for you. Or might be a little bit easier. Do the history of you. Talk with your family and ask them about your parents and their lives, and your grandparents and your great-grandparents, and the cities that they lived in, and when they moved or why they moved, and make it personal, right? And when you know the story of you, you're going to start creating those pathways that branch out, right? Just like the branches of your family tree. Maybe you have a relatives that comes from this particular country, and they left that country for a particular reason. So then you go, okay, well, let me talk about or study about the reason of that time. Maybe there was a revolt in that period of time in the country that your grandparents came from. They ran away from that revolt. So what was the cause of that revolt? And you can start building your network off of your own story. And when you know the story of you, that'll make you feel more at home in the world that you live in and more aware of it, but it'll also give you leads to do more study, both forward in time and backwards in time. All right? That's just my suggestion, but there's no magical way to do it. If you like history, just go find a book and pick up and start reading. And that's the best place to go. Holy Roman Empire, 1,000 Years of European History, Peter H. Wilson. I read how the book is structured and got excited as an academic book. Do you think I could do that? Sure, why not? Go for it. I say give it a shot. You'll figure out pretty quick if you don't like it. And don't feel bad about not finishing a history book. Read a part of it, and if you don't like it, find something in there, some topic or word or person or kingdom that you might think is more interesting. And even if you don't finish that whole book, at least use that as a springboard to go into something else. Oh, no, not at all. That's what I'm here for. We're here for a conversation. We can all be friends and talk about this stuff. And goodness knows I can ramble for hours. You should not be sorry. Never feel bad about asking questions. That's what we're here for. We all have your back. Best of luck. And you don't have to go do it right now. You can hang around and ask more questions about these guys. So, Yasovarman moves his capital to Yashadharapura to build more temples, and man, does he do it. We can tell that during his reign, that Buddhism had made its way into the Khmer Empire. And this is again going to come from India. And Yashadvarman was really big on the Hinduism. So the stuff that he's building are Hindu monasteries and temples, and we don't know if this is necessarily a direct reaction to Buddhism showing up or him making sure that everybody knows that he's a good Hindu. So either way, Buddhism is becoming a popular religion in the Khmer world during this time period. So we'll fast forward a little bit and get to Suryavaram. This is Suryavaman the First, who has a really, really long rule. Um, 44 years worth of rule. This guy's a pretty big deal. Yes, absolutely. Figuring out what you're not interested in is just as important as figuring out what you're not. Absolutely. I am weird in that I've never really met much history that I don't like, but there are people that I know that are very excellent historians that don't like talking about stuff. Like the professor that was my thesis advisor would not really care very much about talking about the Khmer Kingdom because that's just not his interest. He would tell me I would go do that. Or if he was teaching a World Civ class and needed somebody to talk about the Khmer, he would just tell me, hey, come to my class and teach this lecture. You do your thing. Greek history is, it can be difficult. You just have to understand that it happens in chunks. And you can't necessarily pick up in the middle. You have to sort of start at the beginning to understand how it builds, because it starts in chunks and then it sort of turns into a snowball. And all of the stuff from the past gets stuck into it and compacted into it. So start with the Minoans or the Mycenaeans. That would be my suggestions if you want to really start about the Greeks. There you go. Mycenaeans and Minoans. And if you want to go back to a few streams ago and look at the VODs on my channel, we talked about the Mycenaeans and Minoans. So you can, if you want to watch that video later on to get some more information, feel free to do so. So who's Surya Varman, and what's his deal, and why does he do it, and what's his whole issue? Surya Varman is important because he changes. He's going to change the shift of focus to Buddhism. And he is going to be pretty important to Buddhism's growth in the Khmer world. His title, by the way, his death title. So again, all these Khmer emperors have titles when they die. His death title was the king who has achieved nirvana, which is a blatant slap in the face to any Hindu in the nation, and a clear designator that this guy was a Buddhist, right? Because nirvana is a purely Buddhist idea. The Hindus do not believe in nirvana. Buddhism spread because of the Silk Road. It spread into China because of the Silk Road. It spread into the Southeastern Asian world through trade, but not forced trade through China, if that makes any sense. Though this later sort of enveloped into the Silk Road, but that's not necessarily until right around this time. Okay, so Surya Varman, Buddhist. He's also known for building a whole bunch of roads, and this is going to be important because roads are built for usually two reasons. Today they're built because politicians want nice driveways, but in the ancient world they were built to move around trade and to move around armies, because you want to be able to march your army as fast as possible and as straight a shot as possible, right? And it should also make no surprise then that the reign of Surya Varman is absolutely full of internal fighting. There are lots of rebellions against him. There are a lot of challenges to his ruler, to his status as king. And we don't know if this is purely internal fighting because of his, family members trying to take over, or if this has anything to do with his religious shift. Now, clearly him moving from a Hindu to a Buddhist perspective is going to cause some ripples, right? And surely some of the regions that were heavily Hindu did not care for this shift very much. And it could be that he also chose this to gain support from certain regions in opposition to his own family members, right? So if all of his family members were very devout Hindus and Surya Varman found support amongst the Buddhists and he converted to Buddhism, that would then gain him all the support that he could use against his own family members, right? Right, so there's a lot of fighting during his reign. He does rule for a very long time. He's going to again build lots of roads that he's going to use to move his armies around. He's also going to build a lot of reservoirs. One of the things about the Southeastern Asian region is that it's very, very wet. And if I kill the borders, you can see this is a very green place, very fertile place. But also, if you look at the area that we're talking about, you can see that there's this sort of floodplain area. There's a bunch of highlands, and the rivers are all going to run this direction. So when it rains a lot during the rainy season, a lot of this area floods really, really badly. And Surya Varman is not the first person to build reservoirs, but the ones that he builds are enormous. And they catch a lot of this rainwater, and they store it for periods of time where it doesn't rain. And there are canals and irrigation channels built off of these reservoirs to open up more arable farmland. Hey, Arcadian. Oh, no, don't apologize. Welcome. I'm glad you can make it regardless of whether or not you got here, finger quote, on time. You do you, my friend. We're all here for you. So Surya Varman's going to sort of mark one of the higher domestic policies of the time. He's got a lot of people on his side. He does a lot of public works. He's going to have to fight a lot, though. And that fighting is going to sort of carry on through the next couple of rulers. And by the end of his reign, there's not really going to be a really solid leader for about the next 60 years. You're going to have kings that do things that are, grand, and they build palaces and they do all sorts of cool stuff. But it's not until about 1113 AD that we get another big, strong, unified central power. And that's going to be under Suryavarman II. And I know all these guys have the same names. I apologize for that. It's who they were. So we are learning about the Khmer Kingdom, or Khmer Empire, who were based in southern region. Oh man, I forgot about so many of these pictures. I need to show pictures. Let me show pictures. That was one of the big things that my wife requests. My wife really likes it when I show pictures, and I've skipped them because I've gotten very interested in the topics. Okay, so again, this is Bakong, a really big, a really big temple built by Jayavarman II. This is Yasovarman I, and you can actually see here. Well, I don't know how many of you are super familiar with foreign types of art or art history, but you can definitely tell here that this is very highly influenced by the Indian art, and especially Hindu Vedic art, especially with the headdress here and the decorations around, even the way that the body is postured and the stuff that they're holding here and the way that they're holding it. This is an image that was carved into one of the temples that Yasovarman was responsible for building. So this is sort of a self-portrait. You would want to depict yourself in the way that you thought was best. The fact that he chose to have his depiction done in a style that was so heavily based on Hinduism is just another sign that this dude was a really devout Hindu. Is there influence of Bactria, Alexander, his voyages in Khmer art? So Alexander is... let me switch off of images real quick just to get over here to the map. The furthest that Alexander gets is to this region up here in India, the region that's called Punjab. And the Bactrian region is sort of in this area right here, which is where modern-day Pakistan, Afghanistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan is. So the Bactrian world up here is going to be pretty distantly separated from the Khmer world. There is not a terribly large amount of Greek influence down that far. What you can tell, though, is that the Greek art that did inspire a lot of stuff in India had then created sort of a new genre, if you will, of Indian art that had made its way down to the Khmer area. So I don't think we can necessarily draw a direct line that said, here's what Alexander the Great did, and it had this effect in Khmer. But there are maybe sort of echoes of some Greek elements, but it's not very heavy. The northern Indian world had solidified very heavily after Alexander showed up, and that was, to put it into context, that was in the 1330s BC when Alexander showed up in India. So the time period that we're talking about was almost 1,500 years later. So there were sort of echoes there, but it's not necessarily fully connected, if you will. So there you go. And we'll talk about Khmer warfare. I've got some pictures of warriors later on. I sort of do a sort of cultural wrap-up at the end after we do the sort of historical narrative to sort of hit some high points. All right, so let's go back to the images. So again, this is Yasovarman I, decked out in his temple, dressed like a good old-fashioned Hindu ruler. I skipped one. Why is this image not showing up? Oh, fiddlesticks. Doesn't look like I actually... Yeah, that's a dude. apparently the picture that I copied wasn't actually a picture. It was a link, and it's not loading. So I am now finding a new image and dumping it in my image folder so that I can actually show you what I wanted to show you. Okay, so I'm going to have to skip through a bunch of stuff to get to the end. Hold on. Oh, and it's not going to pick it up. Ah, crud. Oh well. Oopsie. Okay, so I had a picture of a temple, and I'll put it here, and while I'm talking about it a little bit, you can maybe go Google it if you want to. There is a specific temple called Baphuon. That's an M. Baphuon. It's a temple that was built by Sayavarman I as a Buddhist temple, but it's built in the same sort of style that you would see for the Hindu temples of the time. So it was pretty interesting. Is that a dude? Is that out of money? No, this is carved into relief of stone. So if you want to go Google Baphuon or look it up later on, pretty cool temple. I'm sorry that I couldn't get the picture to work. I thought I had checked all of these before the stream. It's not very pro streamer of me. I apologize. But before we get too far into it, let's show Suryavarman II. Who is this guy? This is Suryavarman II being carried by servants. You can see that they are fanning him with these big fans because, of course, it's very hot in this area. He's being carried on a litter. He's sort of, again, showing that good old-fashioned Hindu dress. But there is a little bit of Buddhist hinting here, especially with the legs crossed and the form a little bit. It's pretty clear to me. I don't know if I need to be wearing the opinion hat for this or not. I think we'll just sort of say that Suryavarman was aware that the world he was ruling had a lot of people that were both Hindu and Buddhist in it. So maybe not trying to take everybody off. But again, this is Suryavarman II, who reigns from 113 to 1150. This guy is a pretty big deal. He's going to have to fight a civil war to take over. This is the civil war tumult that was still sort of hanging around from Suryavarman I about 60 years earlier. Things had never really completely calmed down. This guy is going to be very much Hindu. And the factions that had been fighting inside the Khmer world had sort of been divided between Hindu factions and Buddhist factions. Suryavarman I had gone with the Buddhists. Suryavarman II is going to restore Hindu purity, as he calls it, to the throne. And he's going to restore Hinduism as the official religion of the Khmer world. He's going to have to fight a lot to do that. He has to fight a war against a lot of other factions, both from his family and rebel factions, to take over everything. But he's also going to start expanding a little bit. And there are some kingdoms in the region that he's going to start trying to take over. Those two kingdoms being the Champa kingdom, which was actually the Cham kingdom. The people are called Champa. And the kingdom of Da Viet. I've got a map of that in a little bit. But one of the reasons why Suryavarman II is so well known is because when he brought Hinduism back, he also felt like he needed to make a statement about how great Hinduism was, to sort of settle the argument between who's better, Buddhists or Hindus. And he's going to say, Hindus are better, and I'm going to prove it. And he builds something called Angkor Wat, which is where we get our turn down for what? Angkor Wat is the biggest temple complex in the world, even still today. It's 401 acres worth of religious buildings. It's dedicated to Vishnu, one of the highest Hindu gods, and it's absolutely spectacular. Let me show you a picture. And if you know anything about Cambodia, this is probably a picture that or a scene that you may have seen before. So again, this is Angkor Wat. You can see here tiny, tiny little people walking into this enormous temple complex. Were the Khmer tolerant of other religions deviating from the official religions like the Persians were? I would say that they would let you do your thing as long as you didn't cause a lot of trouble, but around this time, you didn't really have a lot of options. So if you were going to be Buddhist or going to be Hindu, you were pretty actively taking sides in an ongoing conflict. And they, to my knowledge, there were only a few times where laws were passed that forbade you from practicing one religion or the other. But I couldn't say that they were particularly tolerant. If you're talking about people like the Sassanid Persians, who really didn't care as long as you paid your taxes and fought in your army, I would say that the Khmer never let that level of religious tolerance happen. Or even if you're talking about like the earlier Persians, like under Cyrus, where he didn't really care as long as you didn't cause trouble. Using Persians is a little bit of a hard thing to nail down because there are so many different ones. You know, you have your original Persians, and you have your Parthians, and you have your Sassanids, and all the different parts. The Sassanids. Sassanids are actually one of my favorite Persian dynasties. I quite like the Sassanids. I'm looking forward to getting there in history so I can have a whole stream about Zoroastrianism. Okay, so here we go. There we go. That's Angkor Wat. Really cool place. I would love to go there. I did mention, though, that Suryavarman II starts causing trouble with some of his regional enemies. And we can see here the kingdom of Da Viet, which is going to be in modern-day northern Vietnam. And then you have this green region right here, which at the time was a similar group of cultural people called the Cham, but it had not completely formulated themselves into one solid kingdom yet. They would later form the Cham kingdom, and they're referred to as Champa people, because they're going to be an enemy of the Khmer for quite some time. Fun thing to notice here, if you know anything else about world history, and if you ever studied about the Vietnam War, you'll know that for a time there was North Vietnam and South Vietnam. And if you want to look at this map that comes from roughly the 1100s AD, you can still sort of see North Vietnam and South Vietnam. There have been regional, ethnic, and even linguistic differences between North Vietnam and South Vietnam for quite some time. That wasn't something that was completely created in the post-World War II era. Sassanids became decadent, I believe, and they got demolished by hit-and-run tactics from the new Islam Caliphate. Yeah, they got beaten up by the Arab expansion. I love Zoroastrianism. How does the father of monotheistic religions? Oh, that's... I'm not going to give you my opinion on that, but that's an interesting opinion to hold. Not everybody believes that Zoroastrians are monotheistic. Some people would argue that they are dualistic, because they have two gods. They have Ahura Mazda and they have Ahriman, but that's for later stream. I don't want to see. This is me wanting to chase a rabbit, but I'm not going to do it. I really like those guys. The Sassanids, that is. I mean, I like all history, but Sassanid Persia it's kind of got my heart. Anyway, is there some geographic reason for the divide between North and South Vietnam? Well, there's a river that sort of runs between the two of them, but they do have different geographical features. The North, if we just look at them, let me get over here to Google Earth. So if you look at the north part, it's on the other side of this sort of mountain divide up here. Let me throw the modern borders up so we can see what we're looking at. All right, so if you look at the northern part of Vietnam, it's based around this big port region right here. And if you look at South Vietnam, it's based around this big flat region down in here. So the original cultures developed down in here, and this guy spread. Oh, you can't see it because I'm doing that stupid thing again. So there's a group of people down here that are the Cham that sort of spread slowly up this way, and there's this northern country called Da Viet, which is going to slowly expand southward this way. So the cutoff right about here just happened to be the natural border because of, and you can see it if we zoom in a little bit, this guy, this big cut right here. So, but it's mostly port cities and geographic boundaries, but also cultural boundaries. The southern region is going to have more Hindu influence. The northern region is going to have more Chinese influence. So they're going to get cultural differences that way. Who you trade with makes a lot of influence over who you like and who you don't like, right? You're absolutely right. I read how that it is both monotheistic and dualistic, like the duality of a photon being a wave and a particle. It's actually a good way of trying to explain it. We'll talk about Zoroastrianism for a whole stream, I promise. It'll be a little bit, though. They don't show up until probably the 5th century BC, so we've got a few lectures before we get there. Okay, Suryavarman II is going to be sort of the height. Under his rule, the Khmer Empire is going to be the strongest that it will ever be. And from there, it's sort of all downhill. There are a few moments where they do have really great high points, and we'll talk about some of those. But Suryavarman II is the strongest Khmer ruler. Angkor Wat itself is a testament to that. How much money did it take, and how many man-hours did it take to create that? Nobody else came close to even half of some. Well, maybe not half. Nobody else came that close. This is the sort of apex of Khmer Empire power. And part of that is not just because the kingdom itself has problems, but part of it is because the region around the Khmer Empire is also becoming more stately and more unified. So they're going to have external threats that start popping up. And by the time we get to the next few rulers after Suryavarman II, those Cham people, the Champa people, are going to be a really big problem. And it's going to start with invasions. The Champa are going to invade in 1178, and they do a lot of damage. They're going to raid again in, 1177 is the first raid, then 1178 is the second raid. And in the second raid in 1178, they actually take over the capital city. They take over Angkor. And they turn the Khmer kingdom into a vassal state. I do have a set stream time. I truly love this. I caught your stream like a month ago when you were wrapping up, so I can write it down. Yes, I do. The regular set stream time is Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And usually every other Tuesday, I do a viewer request. Now, I've done several of them in a row because people have asked, and I'm a pushover. So if you go to my channel below the viewer window, you can see a little thing that says schedule, and it will show you the next time that I'm going to be on stream, which is a couple of days. And then probably going to take viewer request off next week. I'm a little tired. Not that I'm tired of teaching history, but it takes a lot of effort for me to put all this stuff together and find pictures and fun stuff like that. So we'll do Thursday next week, but we won't do Tuesday. Not. Ooh, 2 a.m. Oh, man. That's a long time. 2 a.m. Well, and you can always watch the VOD. I would love to have you in the stream, but I don't want to make you stay up until 2 a.m. You are welcome. And you can always watch the VOD and send me questions. My email address is right here. So if you watch the VOD and you have questions about it, feel free to send me an email with questions. I'd be happy to answer them for you. All right. So the Khmer fall under Champa control in 1178. And the Champa controlled the Khmer Empire for the next 4 years. And it's not until the rule... I love how I can just change a few letters here. It's not until the rule of Jayavarman VII that the Khmer gained their independence again. Jayavarman VII is going to be a guy that changes things. He pushes out the Champa. He's able to reestablish Khmer independent control. But he's going to go over to Buddhism. And he's going to rally the troops, bring everybody together, and he's actually going to counter-invade the Champa and take over the Champa kingdom. So this is like in dodgeball. When you catch the ball, you get a two-person swing. Not only did we push you out, then we conquered you. But again, he is very much Buddhist, and I can show you an example of that. So this is a statue of him, Jayavarman VII. And if you know anything about Buddhist art, you'll know that this guy looks a lot like the Buddha. And that was done on purpose, because again, he's a Buddhist. Can these guys not come up with original names? If you want me to make you perhaps a little bit more uncomfortable, there are another 6 Jayavarmans. Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. So Jayavarman VII conquers the Champa, brings them under his control, and things look really great for a while. His rule from that point forward is actually very peaceful. This guy builds a ton of temples, just absolutely crazy ton of temples. And I'll show you some of these temples in a little bit, because they have really cool inscriptions on them, and I want to save those for a little bit later. There's one big one called Bayon. If you want to go ahead and look it up, that he builds. Really cool stuff. Lots of really great scenes on the walls. So he's very powerful. He's centralized the world. He's expanded. He's brought Buddhism back to the central. And one of the things that's pretty interesting about him is he chooses the Mahayana branch of Buddhism, which had not necessarily been so popular in India, but was much more popular in China. Mahayana Buddhism caught on much more readily in China than it did in Southeastern Asia. The version of Buddhism in Southeastern Asia that's more prevalent is called Theravada. They're going to run out of Roman numerals. Do the Khmer annex it? Oh, they take it over. They completely annex it. They bring it into their control. And there's an interesting question here. Does he go with the Mahayana because he's looking northward towards China, and that's perhaps a bit of a shift from India being so prevalent? We really don't know. What we have are some documents where he said that he wanted to heal the land. He wanted to heal the hurts of his people. That seems to be much more aligned with the work that the Mahayana branch were doing at the time. So it might have just been a personal preference where he saw the pain that his people had gone through with all these wars, being dominated by a foreign power. So maybe that was just a personal decision. So interesting things to think about here. But Jayavarman VII is going to sort of be the last gasp of big power. After him, things go down, and it's just constant down. When he loses power, there is a big chunk of the western provinces of the Khmer that break away. If we're looking at the map here, so we have good old Angkor Kingdom, which would have been the Khmer. We see the Champa over here. The Champa break away and reclaim their independence. But this big guy right here, the Kingdom of Sukhothai, these guys and these guys, the Latburi, are going to completely gain their independence. Sukhothai had actually been a city that was associated with the Khmer at one time because of the trade routes that they had established. And the old Khmer Empire used to be much bigger than just this guy right here. So this is a later shrunken down period of time that we're looking at here. So the Kingdom of Sukhothai is going to break away, and they're actually going to end up being one of the Khmer's biggest enemies. So after Jayavarman VII, we lose the Champa territory, which becomes independence. We lose Sukhothai. This is going to be pretty bad because around that same time, this is happening. The Sukhothai independence happens in 1238. The Champa territory regains its independence in 1243. And then, just right on the heels of that, the Mongols invade. Yes, the good old-fashioned Mongols. Is Galanuva still around? The Mongols. The Mongols, Galanuva. Kublai Khan. Are there certain similarities of a kingdom deteriorating, kind of like theories sort out of palace, out of economy, pure polity theory? The problem that the Khmer were facing had a lot to do with the internal fighting. The brothers and uncles not allowing peaceful transition of power. The outside influences of people like the Mongols, who are expanding quite readily through basically everywhere at that time. There was just a whole bunch of bad things that happened at once. It was sort of a really bad long line of dominoes for the Khmer. Man, if Galanuva isn't here, and I'm talking about the Mongols, that is going to make Galanuva so angry. Kublai Khan! Khan! The crazy thing is that everybody started expecting the Mongols, and then they weren't wrong. Could you view the Huns and Mongols as similar and why they started to move and migrate? Yeah, I could think of a few things that happened that made both of those people move. And usually that happened because China got really strong and unified and pushed everybody in the northern part out. That's going to be a domino that knocks stuff over and goes all the way to Europe both times. They're not similar ethnically. The Huns are pretty different than the Mongols ethnically speaking and culturally speaking. But yeah. The Mongols are on the viewer requested schedule, and Galanuva was the one that has been fighting tooth and nail to keep them on there. And now I'm talking about the Mongols. I bet Galanuva is at dinner right now. I know that usually around this time Galanuva eats dinner. Alas. So, okay. The Mongol invasion is going to be bad. The Mongols get down into the Khmer world. They're going to force the Khmer to pay tribute. They're also going to really destabilize the region. When the Mongols under Kublai Khan, and this is the Yuan dynasty of China, when they sort of go back home, everybody starts fighting over scraps, and the Sukhothai and the Khmer are going to be at each other's throats. They're going to try to claw back as much as they can, and this is going to be really, really bad and really, really devastating. Around this period of time, did the plague... That's great that you asked that. Yes. That's like one of the dominoes that's almost at the end here. So, somewhere around 1327, there's going to be another change in the kingdom, and the Hinduism of the Khmer is going to sort of go away for good at that point. not that there aren't people still there today that practice Hinduism, but the leadership is not going to be Hindu pretty much ever again, as long as they're called the Khmer Empire. There's one last Hindu inscription on a temple about 1327, and then after that, it looks pretty much like Theravada Buddhism takes over and becomes the sort of norm. You also start seeing kings of the Khmer give up the title Devaraja. And again, that's a Hindu title. They're not the god king anymore. They're Theravada kings. So this is going to be sort of a cultural domino here. If your king is no longer claiming religious authority over you, do you really have to follow that guy anymore? And it could be that the kings realized that they didn't have a lot of regional power anyway, and they were trying to do just whatever they could to hold on to what power they had. Or this could have been some sort of effort to unite everybody around Buddhism one more time and give it another go. But Devaraja goes away in the 1320s, and then about 1330, the plague hits. And then it just keeps getting worse, because around that time, there's a new kingdom that had started to grow around the Sukhothai area that kind of merges with the Sukhothai. Didn't the plague start with the Hittites around 1200 BC? Oh man, the plague goes back even further than that. The plague is so old. One of the oldest examples that we have are the Hittites in 1200 BC. But it's pretty clear that the plague had older roots than even that. Just from doing stuff like trying to do reverse genetic stuff, where we dig stuff up. 1536 Justinianic plague. Yeah, and that was pretty bad. So the 1330 one that we're talking about, this is 1330 AD. And this is roughly equivalent with the Black Death that's going on over in Europe. And it's from the same sort of outbreak of the plague. The plague hits the world really hard in the 1300s. You seem to remember that from last stream. Something about armadillos, right? Okay, so the Mongols sort of recede into the background. The Yuan dynasty falls apart. The Sukhothai kingdom ends up getting merged in with a lot of other kingdoms and turning into something called the Ayutthaya, which is this guy right here. The Ayutthaya are going to be really big enemies of the Khmer. You can also see that Da Viet has expanded in the absence and taken over part of the Champa. You can see that Lan Sang and Lan Na have expanded. And this is going to put a lot of pressure on the Khmer. They don't really have a good place to expand because their neighbors had unified and were standing against them. And it's a lot harder to fight a kingdom than it is to fight a single city. And this pressure is going to really start choking the Khmer pretty hard. By the way, Ayutthaya is a pretty cool place itself. Has a lot of similarities with the Khmer people. This is a big temple in the actual city of Ayutthaya, which is in modern-day Thailand. So you can even see architectural similarities between the two regions. Did the plague spread because of the Silk Road being used again because of the Mongols, so more goods and people flow? I would say both of those. Trade between Europe, Asia, and Africa was increasing pretty rapidly from about 1000. Then the Mongols were moving around pretty readily for about the next 200 years or so. So anytime you get lots of people moving around in big numbers like that, one person gets sick and then everybody gets sick. It's kind of how pandemics work. So there we go. All right, let's wrap up the historical timeline, and then we'll talk a little bit about the culture, and then we'll kind of wrap up for good. Well, not for good, but... So, Ayutthaya, this big kingdom, is going to be the new sort of threat. They're going to go down into Khmer, and they're going to sack the capital city of Angkor in 1352. They're going to push out the Khmer rulers and set up puppet kings. The Khmer are going to have one last kind of hope about 1357, and for about 20 years they regain their independence. But by 1431, the last of the Khmer emperors basically figures out that Angkor as a capital city just doesn't work. It's too close to the borders with Ayutthaya, and so they move the capital city down to Phnom Penh, which is the modern-day capital of Cambodia. This doesn't mean that it's the end of the Khmer people. Their kingdom turns into a lot of smaller little sort of quasi-city-states. There are periods where one king puts together 10 or 15 of these cities and makes a good-sized little kingdom over the next couple hundred years. But you're not really going to see a unified, regionally powerful Khmer kingdom ever again, especially once the European settlers start showing up. That's really going to have a big impact on the entire region. And that happens by the end of the 1400s and beginning of the 1500s. So that's kind of the end of the Khmer. Now, of course, there are still people that speak dialects of this language. There are still people that are ethnically tied to the Khmer people. The word itself didn't completely go away. If you know anything about the Cold War period of Cambodia, you'll know about a guy named Pol Pot and a Cambodian group called the Khmer Rouge, who were pretty brutal people. It's kind of like a state of the Holy Roman Empire. It's not even that centralized for most of the rest of the history. There's not even a unified ruler of all of them. Political potential. Oh, is that what Pol Pot stands for? You mean in a state like? Some of the states, I would say it's even more like an older sort of Bronze Age or Iron Age city-state, where you have one city and maybe a couple dozen miles around it that are controlled by one little polity. And some of the states of the Holy Roman Empire were like that, but not a lot of them. Okay, so culturally speaking, who were the Khmer? We've talked about a little bit of this. We'll kind of hit the big things again. Their language is Old Khmer, and it is very heavily influenced from Sanskrit, which is a language that comes out of India. Even the word Wat, in like Angkor Wat, is from a Sanskrit word Vata, which just means enclosure or like a fenced-in area. Kind of like an Asu with a Kora. I can't say that I know the words there, the Kievit. I apologize. No. Sorry about that. I thought that my button was on the wrong thing. That was fun. Okay, where am I? There we go. They did trade quite a bit. Again, their trade is going to be land-based, but they're going to have sea routes, especially the longer the Khmer go, the bigger these port cities are going to be. Pro-streamer, right? India and China are going to be their largest trade partners. That's going to be true from the very beginning of the Khmer Empire all the way through to the end. China and India were the biggest regional power bases in the area. They're going to trade a lot with the Southeastern Asian world, especially again down with some of these areas down here, which are again, Malaysia and, well, this is Singapore, but that's a different world. Malaysia and Indonesia. But India and China are going to be their two biggest trade partners. When it comes to warfare, they're going to be pretty warlike. We've talked a lot about their fighting. We have some pretty cool images of both their army and their navy. Let me show you some of those. So here we have a big mural. This is, by the way, on the Temple of Bayon. I mentioned that earlier. You can see here that we're fighting with spears. We have ourselves some clubs. Sometimes we have nice shields. We also have elephants. Elephants are going to be a big part of warfare for the Khmer. War elephants are very frequently going to be given as gifts, and ivory is going to be one of their big trade goods. We have quite a few records, especially once they had to pay tribute to the Mongols, of ivory being one of the gifts that gets sent up to China as tribute. Hey, Chocolata. Oh, man. Where are we talking about? So the Khmer, let me switch back over to our map. The Khmer Empire was an empire from the early 800s to the early 1400s AD, and they were mostly based here in southeastern Asia. Roughly this chunk right here. They are most closely associated today with the modern-day country of Cambodia. And we're talking right now about the types of warfare that they used, and I'm showing a mural, wall relief of some of their war stuff. But if you have other questions, please feel free to let me know. Okay, so again, lots of fighting. You see big spiky things. The VOC ships. Well, the Dutch East India Company is going to get over there for sure. But the Khmer are mostly falling apart by the time the Dutch really have influence in the region. Oh, you're Dutch. Welcome. So by the time the Dutch East India Corporation sets up on Batavia and gets running, that's in the 1500s, the Khmer had ceased to be a centralized empire. The Khmer fell apart somewhere in the 1430s. Okay, so what we're looking at here as a picture is sea battles, because there were actually pitched battles at sea. And some of the times that we talked about expansion and fighting, one of the things that the Khmer did was load a bunch of people up with swords and spears and shields and put them on boats and rowed them around to their enemies, unloaded at their docks, and attacked them. And this is quite common. So you get really big sea battles. And you also have battles on rivers, especially the Mekong, which runs in that region. How did the boats work like triremes? They usually didn't have multiple levels of oars, but they did have oars. They also had sails. So you could use the oars for like inland stuff if we're moving up and down a river against the current, but you could use the sails if you're out on the open ocean. The neighboring kingdoms have equally developed navies. Initially, no. The Kingdom of Java that we mentioned way at the beginning, when we were talking about Jayavarman II, they had a big navy, and that's how they had used their power to expand up into Southeastern Asia. There were other regional powers, especially the Chola Kingdom, which, well, I guess it should have been called the Chola Empire. I apologize. A group of people from southern India and Sri Lanka called the Tamils, Tamil, were expanding. Dun, 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 dun. Thank you for the follow. How do you know all of this? I'm a gigantic history nerd, and my brain holds on to stuff. Would you call one layer a monoreme? I'll take it. I'll take it. So the Chola Kingdom had a big navy and had expanded into an empire level that had territory all the way around the Indian Ocean. They had a big navy, and they had based a lot of their power off of naval expansion. The Chinese, of course, had an enormous navy. But if you're talking about the individual ones, like the Sukhothai or the Champa or the Daviet, their navies were not as developed as the Khmer. So that gave the Khmer a little bit of an edge. Can you explain to me sometime why the movies have it wrong about the knights. Movies want to sell tickets, not tell history. And that's the best answer that I can give you. They would rather sell tickets and tell a story that they think people want than tell history. And sometimes history is boring, but sometimes history is not boring. And I don't think history is ever boring. I think that it's just not being told the right way. You can tell people stuff that makes it interesting, and you can tell it in a way that makes it interesting. But usually when you see movies about knights, they mess it all up. Most notably, people in the medieval world were not all super good looking, right? Like you look at some show like Game of Thrones, and every guy is great looking and every woman is great looking. Let's just be realistic here. People in the medieval world didn't have hygiene like we have hygiene. I'm missing stuff. They're amazing for that time. King is that we call Monoreem. VRC shits. Thanks for the follow. Yeah. Had to be something more under the... Yeah. Right. Under the helmet. Put your face shield down. You know a lot about medieval stuff. Awesome. I feel like it's such a missed opportunity to not use authentic martial arts. Sure. I agree with that as well. Zweihanders, like brutes, is a shame. Yeah. You don't just kind of like run in and like swing it like this. The reason you called it two-hand is you fight with two hands, right? That's the whole name of the sword. I'm getting off topic. Let me wrap up with the Khmer stuff, and then we'll sort of have a little bit more of a Q&A, and then we can kind of wrap up. All right, so again, warfare, big navies, large population. They actually did have a standing army, which meant that they had soldiers that were just soldiers, and that was their job. So they could use that base of population to expand their power even in the off-season, right? So, Galanuva, you're back. Oh, man, you missed it, and you're going to be so mad. We had a good 5-minute stretch where we talked about the Mongols invading the Khmer and Kublai Khan and the Yuan dynasty. And I think you were probably eating dinner. Oh, I called it. Oh, man, I'm so sorry. I'm laughing, but it's not because I'm laughing at you. It's just a horrible, ironic situation. Oh, man. Sorry, Galandu. I actually tried to stretch it out a little bit, hoping that you would come back. Yeah, there will be more. Yeah. Okay. So architecturally, we've already talked about the influence of India. One of the things that I do want to note about the temples, the reason a lot of the temple structures and architecture looks similar is because there's actually a style in Hindu architecture, especially Vedic. And when I say Vedic architecture, I mean roughly about 1500 BC to about 600 BC in India. You really get into the Vedic period where the temples are built to sort of mimic what people thought the homes of the gods would look like. So like if you went to the realm of the gods in the Hindu world and looked at one of their houses, that's how they built their temples. And a lot of the temples like Angkor Wat and Bayon and Balphuon that we talked about are built in such a way as to look like what they thought Hindu gods' houses would have looked like. And we've talked about their religion again. It bounces back and forth between this good old-fashioned Vedanta Hinduism and then Mahayana Buddhism and Theravada Buddhism, and you have this sort of intersection and lots of arguing about that. All right. So, if you want to read about the Crusades, oh man, I'm blanking on the name. He teaches at St. Louis University. Oh man, what's his name? KP, could you Google St. Louis University Professor Crusades? Warren Treadgold, I think is his name, but I might be wrong. Me? I am from the United States. Oh, you might be talking to the Kevin. Okay. I think it's Warren Treadgold, but I'm not 100% certain. Okay, So, or here, I can do it. I'm already right here. If you want to... Let me see if I can find the actual book. Nope. Treadgold. Yeah, there's a crusade book by this guy named Treadgold that's actually quite good. He does a lot of really, really good research about it. I think it's called The World of the Crusades, is the name of the book. I would say that would be a good place to start as a Adrian Goldworthy. I've heard the name, but I don't think I've ever read any of the books that Adrian Goldworthy has published. I am from America, yes. I am from the southern part of America in a state called Mississippi. Why do you love other countries' history? Because we live on the same earth. We all live on the same planet. The borders that we draw in imaginary space are exactly that. They're imaginary. We are human beings, and we're all the same species. There's no subspecies of human, and all of our history is all of our history. And that's really my opinion. America was beginning to ruin it. We've done quite a bit of ruining history. There's no such thing as a perfect country, and admitting where we've done bad things is part of trying to not do them again. You were rooting for Saladin. Saladin's an interesting character. The stuff that he has to do to take over, and the way that he whips everything into shape is really impressive. And his battle tactics are almost unmatched. Really, really smart guy. But you have Dutch blood. I don't have Dutch blood. My family comes from Ireland by way of Scandinavia, and England by way of Normandy, then Scandinavia. Always interested in Eurocentrism and Sinocentrism, how history is different regionally, and how historiography works. Yes, America's a country of immigrants. Right. All right, so everyone is Dutch. Well, the Dutch were everywhere for quite some time. For a good 200 years, the Dutch ruled the seas. Nobody taking that back. Okie dokie. So I am officially sort of kind of done with my spiel, or my presentation, if you will. If anybody has any questions about the Khmer or the region or the stuff that we talked about tonight, I'd be happy to answer them. If anybody wants to... wait, is it over here? It's over here, isn't it? I can't remember where they moved the adventure hat points to. If anybody wants to redeem some adventure points, now would be the time. I'm going to go over to the Twitch so that we can make ourselves a poll, because we have to choose our topic for the next viewer request stream. Summon the Opinion Hat. Oh, the first show of the Opinion Hat. All right, so for those of you that don't know, I have headgear. This guy is the Adventure Hat, which is our current emote that we have. Adventure. I wear this and tell stories about places that I've been and things that I've seen. But my friend KP actually provided me with this beautiful hat, which I have been told makes me look very opinionated when I wear it. Do I look opinionated? So this is the Opinion Hat, and this is the inaugural Opinion Hat summoning. I look Dutch. It makes me look Irish. I am quite Irish. Anyway, so dealer's choice opinion. I'll give you a really important opinion right now. The world that we're living in right now, especially in America, is but also other places in the world, is having to come to grips with the good parts and the bad parts of history. And a lot of countries and a lot of people and in a lot of regions, people aren't owning up to the bad parts of history. Here's the thing. Unless you as an individual have done something to perpetuate the wrongs of the past, you're not to blame for what older people and dead people have done, especially people that are hundreds of years in the past. Now, if you're a neo-Nazi and you're actively out there preaching hate, you suck. But most people today are not the people that were involved in this stuff. And we're taking it a bit too personally. Especially down where I live in the southern part of America, people are taking a lot of the stuff that's happening right now really, really personally. And heritage is one thing, but history is another thing. And heritage doesn't always line up with the truth of history. And you have to admit that you've screwed stuff up, because human beings are capable of both very excellent, great things and very horrible, bad things. And just like I do stuff that's good and bad, my ancestors have done things that's good and bad. And we have to own that. And denying that anybody in the past has ever done anything wrong and only taking them as some heritage symbol that has to be honored is making people do stupid, stupid things right now in the world. It just really is. And that's my opinion on that. Well, the Dutch had periods of time where they were the world's largest slave traders and moved millions of people from Western Africa to South America, the Caribbean, and North America. And that's not a good thing. And those people profited off of buying and selling human beings, which is, and at that time it was normal, but that still doesn't make it okay. It used to be okay to bash people over the head with a rock and kill them, but we have laws now that recognize that that's wrong. And it did happen. It happened. And that's the thing that we have to do. We have to say, look, there were good people back then that, yeah, and exactly. And the people in America bought them. And the people in the Caribbean bought them. And the people in Brazil that were Portuguese bought them. So there's good and bad, and we have to recognize that all over the world. All right. So let us pose the question. Everyone was drunk? Well, if you kill somebody when you're drunk, you can still go to jail for it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time where I will ask you for your ideas about what we should cover. So what I need from you all are specific things, people, places, ideas, or periods of time. One of them is going to be the Mongols because Galanuva says so. But I need 3 more ideas to put in the poll. So give me some ideas. Now is your time to speak. The Mongols are there. They are currently in the poll, I promise. Given the drop of play on Pro Street, Alexander Hamilton, that's an interesting one. Maybe I should have used my opinion hat on him. London in 1666. Are you talking about when London burned down? I don't know if I could make an entire stream out of just the Great Fire of London. if you could tweak that one a little bit and give me something a little bit bigger to go on, I'd be happy to. I'd be happy to. Oh, it made the story of the devil. Oh, well, 666 actually comes from older periods of time than that. The Holy Roman Empire and how their system worked and why they did not participate in colonizing in the New World. Oh, that's an interesting one. So what we're talking about is Holy Roman Empire during the Age of Exploration. I'll take it. The Black Death? Sure. Alrighty. So I'm going to start this poll. Okie dokie. So if you all will look above your chat window, there will be a little button that will pull down the options. And you right now can go vote on what we will cover next. Yes, the Black Death is the bubonic plague that spread through the world. Galanuva is lobbying for Mongols. All right, so it says I have 11 people in the chat, and I've only got 3 votes so far. So make your votes, make your voice and your vote known. So the Kevin, if you look above the chat window, there should be a drop-down menu that says current poll, and then you just click on the option that you want. So 2 for the Mongols, 2 for Hamilton. Is everybody getting a chance to vote? I am still not seeing lots of votes. That's 2, 4, 5. Only 5 of the current 11 people. Make your voices heard, my friends. All right, so we have a tie between the Mongols and Hamilton. All right, so I think that you're not seeing it. Twitch is scuffed up. I think you can't deal with the technology. So can you do something about the center class? Okay, so are you saying, Kevin, that you did not get a chance to vote? If that is so, and you were going to vote for the Mongols, that would put them over the top and give them 3. I think that's what I'm interpreting from the Twitch chat. What is the Mongols? Mongols were a group of people that started in the northeastern region of Asia and then took over basically, oh man, almost all of Asia and big chunks of Europe. You missed your vote. Oh, Kelly. Kelly, do you want to just tell me what your vote would have been? Can you still see the options? You vote Mongols? Okay, so that's going to do it. I guess that we will do the Mongols. And Galanuva is much rejoicing. Okay. All right. So not this coming Tuesday. So not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. Because I am definitely taking next Tuesday off. You ever... Oh, okay. Okay, I understand. We will cover the Mongols. And we will start with who they were and whether or not they are Shanbei, and we'll go all the way through until they collapse. And we'll talk about... we'll talk about Tengri. And we'll talk about how all of the Dothraki are actually just Mongols. No, not now. No, not now. I mean, I could do it now, but this is 2 streams from now, July the 21st. This coming Thursday is our next meeting. So that is the 9th at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And we'll be talking a little bit about that dark age that I'm talking about, but we're going to move back over to Asia, and we'll talk a little bit about China and the Zhou dynasty of China. Restoration of the Roman Empire, Justinian. I could talk about that right now. Oh, man, I love Rome. All right. Dark Ages is still dark. Well, not as dark as it used to be. COVID is dark. It is dark. But we have the light of each other, right? We have found each other in this crazy world. We have found friends that we can hang out with. We have found people that share interests with us. There's still good left in the world. We have to recognize that there's good and bad, right? Just like I was talking about earlier. So there we go. Okie dokie. So I think it's about time to do a raid. Let me see who we should raid. So the only person that I follow that's live right now is Art of Lee, who is really, really late. Who usually is off by now. But since he raided us quite big a few times ago, let us raid back Art of Lee. Good guy. On Thursday, I will teach you how to survive the collapse of society. Kinda. Okay, so hey Joby. Oh man, what's going on, Joby Door? Let me give Joby a shout out real quick. For those of you that don't know, Joby Door does still stream on Twitch sometimes, right? Or you're going to be coming back to stream some, right? I miss your face, Joby. Joby's a really cool guy. Does Twitch streaming, but also does tattoos. Got great artwork. Go check out his stuff. Go follow him on social media. Go follow him on everything. Give him all the love. He's a great dude. Friend. Somebody that you could hang out with. Sorry, but yeah, we're just about to hit the eject button and go raid Lee. All right, so let us ready our rally cry. We are going to yell adventure. Nersberger, hey, welcome. Yeah, we're just about to go raid Art of Lee real quick. I have wrapped up. Opinion. No, let's raid adventure. And then we'll throw our adventure hats into the mix. Spam them if you got them. So I'm going to click the raid button. I'm going to tell everybody thank you so much for coming in. Welcome to all of our new friends that have come in for the first time tonight. I hope that you have found some interest in the world. I hope that this has been informative. I hope that you feel comfortable. Remember that we're all human beings. We all live on the same planet. We all share the same earth. We got to start thinking that way. You can follow me on social media if you want to. I've been a bit bad about posting stuff, but I'll get better at that. Check out my VODs if you want to get some more history stuff. Otherwise, I will see you this coming Thursday, July the 9th, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And thanks again. I really appreciate everybody coming out. Thank you very much. Lots of love. Take it easy. I'm going to hit the raid button. I'm going to throw up the away sign, and then we'll go raid us some Lee. Right? See you all next time around.